Hey YouTubers, Mr. Palumbo here. Today we are going to discuss something very important and very relevant to our lives as we dive again into the Bill of Rights. Today we're going to discuss the Fourth Amendment. Like its predecessors, the Third, the Second, and the First, the Fourth Amendment is born right out of the colonial experience. The tyranny and the oppressive government that the colonial Americans felt through the English crown or by the English crown, they wanted to prevent these forms of tyranny from happening again. And so they gave us the Fourth Amendment. Well, what is the Fourth Amendment? Let us have a reading of the Fourth Amendment. And when I come back, we're going to do like we did with the 10th Amendment. I want you to tell me what you think it means. Words have meanings. This is simple language. This isn't legal gobbledygook. You can do it. You can tell me what it means. I'll be right back.
The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized.
I want you guys to pay attention to a few words. First one, secure. People are allowed to be secure in their persons, places, and effects. Also, it said, free from unreasonable searches and seizures. So we're going to have to take a look at that. And then when we get to warrants, it says that you have to have probable cause and it has to be particular. Well, what does that mean? That means the warrant needs to be specific. So where I'd like to take us today is I would like to look at a brief history, the colonial history that brought us the Fourth Amendment. And I would like to look at current history, 20th century, things like the war on drugs and the war on terror. And I'd like to show you how these initiatives have slowly eroded and destroyed, or maybe we'll say stretched, our Fourth Amendment rights. Now, I want to say, please don't confuse this video as a pro-drug, anti-cop, propaganda piece. I'm actually very pro-cop. I think the cops get a bad rap. We need to remember that they're law enforcement officers. They don't create the laws. If you are very upset about a law or a violation of your constitutional rights, you need to talk to the judges and the politicians. All the cops do is enforce what's on the books. So, aw snap. Just before and up to the time of the American Revolution, the English government's use of general warrants, or also known as writs of assistance, was a controversial issue. After the French-Indian War, the British government found itself financially strapped, and since they fought the war on the North American continent, they thought that the American colonists should pay for the war. The colonists obviously didn't like this, and they resisted taxes and fees and duties any way they could. One of the main ways they refused to pay these taxes was through smuggling. The British Crown was losing lots of money through smuggling, so they decided to write general warrants or writs of assistance to help find contraband and destroy it. With their general warrant in hand, a British official could search any structure or residence he wanted to, and he could look through all the materials he wished to try to find banned smuggled goods. James Otis, famous for his passionate challenging of General Warrants, he is quoted as saying that General Warrants appeared to me the worst instrument of arbitrary power. Otis would go on to lose his challenge of General Warrants, and the British government continued to use them. But his passionate defense against such warrants really enshrined in the colonial experience, and it was later added to one of the offenses of King George in the Declaration of Independence. Mr. Otis makes a profound point with this quote. He's saying that with a general warrant, the government has free rein to do whatever it wants, and it doesn't have to explain itself to anybody. Now, history has shown us that power corrupts any institution, and without checks and balances, a powerful institution will abuse that power and rights will be violated. One of the ways the Founding Fathers wanted to prevent this was when officials in America would seek a warrant, they would have something called probable cause. Now, probable cause isn't spelled out in the Constitution, but the courts have decided that probable cause has to meet a high standard of probability that a law is being broken or some kind of violation is occurring. The other way that the founders tried to limit or restrict this use of general warrants is through the specificity portion of the warrant clause. The warrant clause is just the second part of the amendment that talks about when you're seeking a warrant. And you'll remember that the reading said you have to identify the particular place or item or thing to be searched or seized. I meant seized. I knew it was seized, not seeded. Come on, guys. Give me a little credit. I am on the internet. I think up to now you could see that the Fourth Amendment is very specific. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. Yeah, it doesn't say what probable cause is, but we can figure that out. But now what we're going to see is a systematic dismantling of the Fourth Amendment for reasons of drug use and national security. I think you should ask yourself, what reason should we give up our constitutional rights? Is it to be safe? Is that a clear, valid exchange? Is it also worth giving up our rights so that we can try to promote healthy living and try to encourage our children and our young people not to do drugs? These are all valid questions. I think we are moving in a direction where the government takes care of us, and the more the government takes care of us, quote unquote, the more rights and liberties and freedoms we give up for that security. But let's get started and look at the history behind the war on drugs and the war on terror. And let's see how it has impacted the Fourth Amendment.
Hey man, am I driving okay?
The idea to criminalize and ban the use of drugs to the level we have today can be contributed back to the pervasive drug use of the 60s and 70s by young people and hippies, which scared the crap out of their more conservative parents. This fear and concern gave President Nixon, who was known as the law and order president, the political capital and the initiative to declare a war on drugs. The war on drugs increased federal spending, added federal departments for law enforcement and drug enforcement agencies, criminalized recreational drug use, instituted mandatory sentencing and no-knock warrants. In the 80s and 90s, the government tried to crack down further on drug use, and the number of people incarcerated skyrocketed. Even if you were stopped for a traffic violation, a police officer is allowed to search your car for drugs. This seems like a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment, seeing that a traffic violation is not probable cause to search my car for drugs or other illegal items. In regards to searching a home or residence, common law requires a knock and announce rule, where the officer announces that he's here and he gives the occupants enough time to leave the premises so he can search whatever the warrant specifies he's allowed to search. However, because of the war on drugs, policies have given warrants, making them more general and flimsy, and they've given officers more power to make decisions without seeking warrants. For example, the no-knock warrant is a change to the original announce and knock principle, which states if an officer knows that someone is destroying drugs or evidence, he can slam down the door without announcing himself and then serve the warrant. I just have to stop here and say, don't you think this is a bad idea? You're going into a suspected drug dealer's house. Don't you think he's got guns? Or it's just a normal family who believe in the Second Amendment and believe they can protect themselves, and they have guns. What's going to happen when you barge in like Rambo, start yelling and screaming? You might get shot. And now here I would just like to share, all you have to do is Google no-knock warrants gone bad. And there are several terrible stories of officers getting killed, children getting killed, innocent people getting killed. Unfortunate development is the militarization of our police departments. Because of the war on drugs and because of the war on terror, more and more police departments are becoming militarized with state-of-the-art equipment, tanks, bomb squads, anti-terrorism units, and the list goes on. Also, the use of the SWAT team is changing. The SWAT team was originally designed for active shooter or hostage crisis environments, but now more and more the SWAT team is being used for drug raids and drug confiscation. This is turning our once beloved and trusted and admired institution of the police force and the police officer into more of an enemy combatant foreign army in our own main streets. After the terrorist attacks on 9/11, the nation was filled with fear, anger, and confusion. Newly elected President George W. Bush vowed for revenge for further attacks. Just a month later, Congress passed and the President signed the Patriot Act. This bill was a series of laws meant to strengthen intelligence agencies and federal law enforcement's ability to fight terror. Major components of the Patriot Act increased the size and spending of the federal government law enforcement agencies, approved and expanded roving wiretaps, NSA bulk collection of private phone records, seek and peek warrants, stricter money laundering laws, and removed obstacles between federal intelligence agencies. Sneak and peek warrants allow federal law enforcement agencies to delay issuing a search warrant and enter a private residence, search, seize, and take photographs without informing the individual until later. Arguing against the constitutionality of sneak and peek warrants, the ACLU writes, any protections afforded by a warrant are meaningless when a searching officer has complete and unsupervised discretion as to what, when, and where to search. The ACLU goes on to say, in regards to the individual not being notified, they then cannot assert or defend their Fourth Amendment rights. Don't sneak and peek warrants sound a little familiar? Sure sounds like the exact thing we just talked about with the British. You know, the writs of assistance, the general warrants. I can just go in and search whatever I want. I think you can see that in the effort to keep us safe, it seems that the government has decided to just sidestep the Bill of Rights. The Bush administration also, after 9/11, created a new federal department, the Department of Homeland Security. Within the Department of Homeland Security was created the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. TSA was created in an attempt to keep our air travel and airports safe from future acts of terrorism. And even though it is quite obvious that the TSA has no probable cause to have thousands of individuals searched, their clothing searched, their bags searched, even their bodies scanned with X-ray machines, the Supreme Court has given them authority to do so. And though most Americans actually agree with this policy, unfortunately, just last summer, it was shown that the TSA failed 95% of its security tests, meaning 95% of terrorism could have gotten through the security protocol. There's a lot more I wish I could talk about, but I have to try to keep these videos short. If you're interested in this topic, please look at roving wiretaps and look at the NSA's bulk collection of our personal phone data. I'm sure you'll see that it's definitely stretching, if not completely violating, the Fourth Amendment and our rights that are protected within that amendment.